Hi everybody, and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This one's from user Throwaway Dog Stalker. My 28 female dog attacked my stalker after he broke into my house. Now my sister-in-law 32 female says my dog is too dangerous to be around my niece 4 female. Feel like I'm going crazy. This is kind of a complicated story, but I'll just get into it. I used to be in this controlling, kind of abusive relationship. When I finally broke it off a year ago, my ex started showing up places, trying to get me to take him back. Eventually, it developed into full-on stalking. He would show up at my work, and took to just waiting outside of it after he was banned, leave notes on my car when I was at the grocery store, leave all kinds of flowers outside my house, and then stick angry notes on my door after he saw me throw them in the trash. Wrote me all kinds of weird, obsessive emails and letters. I've had to change my phone number 3 times. The behavior escalated over time and got scarier and more threatening. In one instance, he started a small fire in my driveway, but the police couldn't get enough evidence connecting him to it. It was after that instance that I put cameras in my yard. I previously only had them pointing at my doors. I was horrified to learn that the police couldn't do crap about any of this until my stalker actually was caught doing something illegal, like breaking into my house. At which point, I might already be dead. I decided I wasn't spending the rest of my life waiting for the other shoe to drop, so I got a handgun and a concealed carry permit, took some self-defense courses, and started doing strength training. I also looked into getting an attack dog. But after all the money I'd sunk into my other methods of protection, they were prohibitively expensive. So I went to my local animal shelter and got the scariest, meanest looking dog I could find. This is where Thor comes in. He's a 100-pound American bulldog. Looks like he'd rip your throat out on sight, but is basically a gigantic teddy bear. He loves every person he's ever met, is incredibly sweet and gentle with my 4-year-old niece, enjoys other animals, and even loves the mailman. I just kind of accepted that he probably wouldn't do anything to protect me from my stalker, but it didn't matter that much because having such a huge dog made me so much more confident. I brought Thor everywhere I could and was working on getting him trained enough to be an emotional support animal, so I could bring him inside places with me. I absolutely would not do this until he was trained well enough to not disrupt a regular service dog. Last month, I woke up in the middle of the night to Thor whining. I was groggy and thought he had to go to the bathroom, so I got out of bed and opened the door. At that point, my house alarm went off, and pretty soon after that, I was face to face with my stalker. I started screaming and went to run for my gun. Before I could do anything though, Thor ran across the room in full attack mode. The memory is really blurry for me, but there was blood all over my living room, and I remember my stalker was eventually able to escape. At which point, Thor chased him outside and then came back to me. When the police showed up, they said Thor was a hero who'd probably saved my life. I don't want to list what they found in my stalker's car after they caught him, and I'm shaking a little as I type this, but I'm sure he was going to bring me somewhere and kill me. It looks like he's going to prison for a long time though, so my nightmare is over. Pretty much everyone in my life thinks Thor is a hero, except my sister-in-law. She and my brother have a 4-year-old, the one I mentioned above, and she says she doesn't want Thor around her, the child, anymore. She says since Thor has snapped in the past, he could do it again, so he's not safe to have around kids. We used to see each other a few times a week before she decided Thor was dangerous. The way she words this makes me really angry because Thor didn't snap. He saw a stranger break into his home, heard his owner scream in terror, and reacted to defend me, himself, and his house. Nothing about that screams, "Danger is around children" to me, unless my niece is also going to break into my house and threaten me. This is also a very emotional issue for me because Thor isn't just a dog to me. He's my safe place, my hero, the one who protected me and kept me safe when no one else could. I've also gotten increasingly anxious since this happened, and I can't go anywhere without Thor. I barely leave my house, pay to pick up my groceries from the store instead of going in because I know Thor isn't allowed inside. And all my friends know that if Thor isn't welcomed in their house, I'm not coming either, although they're perfectly welcome to come hang out at my house instead. I am really going through it, and I'm working with a therapist to overcome this. Luckily, my office is still fully remote, but I need to be able to go back to work once we're in person again. But I really need my brother and sister-in-law's support. I think my sister-in-law thinks I'm just pouting, and that's why I won't just leave the dog home and come over without him. I don't know how to explain to them that the fear hasn't stopped just because my stalker is in jail. It's actually a lot worse than it was before. I've already suggested they come over and I crate Thor, but that wasn't good enough for her. What can I do to make her understand the situation better? Well, OP, the first thing I'm gonna say is that I personally believe that children do benefit by having a dog in their life. But I also understand that not everybody feels the same way. And for that reason, OP, I believe both your point of view and your sister-in-law's point of view have validity. OP, even though I can't relate to what happened to you because it hasn't happened to me, I can definitely understand what a horrible experience it must have been, and your dog saved you, and he's your safe place now. But from your sister-in-law's perspective, she's worried about her daughter. Now, this could be because she just never had a dog and she doesn't understand properly how dogs behave around children, and of course the scary tales they tell sometimes when a dog kinda went nuts, which is not the norm, of course. In my opinion, I would suggest you try to sit down with your sister-in-law and your brother and put everything on the table. It could be a miscommunication issue where you both are lacking some information from the other, and that's why it's a misunderstanding. But of course, that's just my opinion. So let's move on with the community comments to see what kind of advice OP got. More Than Dork says, because there have been plenty of helpful comments already regarding what to do with Thor, great name, and your sister-in-law, I just want to make sure you're also taking care of yourself. What you've been through is horribly traumatic that a few people in the world have experienced. I know you've gone to great lengths to protect yourself with classes and the like, but now that the imminent physical threat is taken care of, it's time to take care of the emotional scars your stalker has inflicted on you. Please seek out some trauma therapy. You deserve to be able to live without the constant cloud of fear hanging over you. Please seek professional therapy. You'll thank yourself so much for being kind enough to take care of your mental health. Best of luck to you and lots of pet for your perfect doggy. Schäferhund2 says, if it weren't for Thor, your stalker probably wouldn't be carted off to prison. Thor helped provide DNA that pinpoints Stalker to the scene. Best move on your part. That's such great news and I'm glad things will be better for you. Your sister-in-law is being ridiculous. A home invasion is something a dog notices. That is why he attacked. You were scared and running, and the dog knew this strange guy was the problem, so he took care of it. Your sister-in-law doesn't understand dogs, and I think is speaking from ignorance. I'm sorry this has happened to you, but parents will be parents. I just keep them separate from here on out to keep the peace. JK baby says, I'm so happy you're okay, and Thor is the goodest boy. Please give him lots of hugs from everyone. Your sister-in-law's being ridiculous. What does your brother have to say about it? I think your compromise of creating Thor when they're over is as good as it gets. The only other option I can see is that Thor wears a gentle leather leash and you keep a hold of him when you're around them. But I doubt that would satisfy your sister-in-law. For what it's worth, she's being incredibly insensitive when she should be thanking whoever above that you had the foresight to get Thor and that he loves you so much. So, from the 3 comments I got, one was asking OP to, take care of her mental health, which is great. Another one was pretty much in line with what I said, and the third one is saying that the sister-in-law is totally insensitive. What do you guys think about this thing? Well, let's move on to the update to see what happened after this. I definitely didn't expect my last post to blow up the way it did. Thank you so much to everyone who commented. I appreciate it that I got advice from all over the spectrum, from people who completely agreed with me to people who completely agreed with my sister-in-law, and people who thought both of us had a point. It helped me see that the problem is more complicated than I thought, which helped me understand that my sister-in-law wasn't just being a D. It also helped me decide what things were and weren't fair to be angry about. The conclusion I came to in all of this is that while my sister-in-law is well within her rights to protect her daughter, she went about it in a way that disrespected me, both as a friend and as a victim of a very recent violent attack. Both my parents and her parents live locally and babysit all the time. She and my brother could have easily dropped my niece off with them and came to visit. It probably would have been a while before I even noticed my niece wasn't coming around, at which point I would have been in a better place and more understanding that she was uncomfortable with her daughter around Thor. Regardless of what some people said about how my sister-in-law and brother don't owe me anything and all their allegiance goes to their daughter, I simply do not feel that way. We were extremely close before this happened. I was always there for them, and would literally drop plans to babysit my niece if my brother and sister-in-law needed a night to themselves. The very least they could have done for me after I was almost kidnapped and murdered is try to find some compromise. We went from seeing each other 3 times a week to pretty much not seeing each other at all. Even if they weren't okay with me creating the dog, they could have easily dropped their daughter off with grandma and grandpa for a few hours so I wouldn't feel completely isolated. I also have a yard, so they could have come over with her and we all could have hung out outside, while Thor stayed inside. I've been upset about this for a while, but wasn't sure if I was right to be upset until so many people echoed that sentiment, so I appreciate it. I invited my brother and sister-in-law over. I promised it would be only an hour or 2 and insisted they leave my niece with my parents, and tried to lay all this out without being confrontational or acting like a D. To my surprise, my brother and sister-in-law had no real understanding that I've been having a difficult time. They thought I was basically fine and everything in my life was more or less back to normal now that my stalker is in jail. I didn't get into it in my previous post, but during the year that I was stalked, I worked really hard to not show many outward signs of fear. I even made jokes about having a stalker. I knew people wouldn't want to hang out with someone who was constantly going on and on about some bad thing that was going on in their life, and I didn't want to be that person who was perpetually in crisis. And more than that, I just didn't want to always be thinking and talking about having a stalker. I wanted to not think about it as much as possible, so I guess I came off as unaffected by the whole thing. I'm not sure if I totally buy that they didn't know I was going through something traumatic and that it was taking a huge toll on my mental state. I mean, I got a gun and paid for tactical training. I bought a home security system. I got active in self-defense classes and strength training, things that I previously had no interest in. Even if I wasn't walking around telling everyone how scared I was, I think anyone would have been able to tell. Plus, who just brushes off having their house broken into in the middle of the night? It seems crazy and they don't seem so emotionally unintelligent that they think that. But both my brother and sister-in-law did apologize for being insensitive. And when I pressed my sister-in-law on why creating the dog isn't good enough, she eventually relented and said that it would be fine. It probably helped that the entire time they were over, Thor was asleep and loudly snoring in his crate. The paranoid part of me is convinced they just don't want to deal with me in a fragile state, made up an excuse about my dog, and are now just going to come up with some other excuse about why they can't see me. I invited them over for dinner in a few days and they're coming, so I guess I'll just have to see from there. I can't stress enough that these used to be my best friends, and I'm heartbroken to have not had their support. I've now been trying to rely on my friends more, and thankfully they've all been really supportive. I'm really lucky that this happened during the health crisis, because nobody's getting frustrated with me that I've basically refused to leave the house for a month. They're all perfectly happy to pick up takeout and come over to watch TV for the 5th night in a row. In other news, yesterday I left my dog at home and drove around my block alone. I was shaking the whole time, but I did it. I keep trying to remind myself that I spent a whole year fighting back even though I was utterly terrified. I can't just lie down and die now that I'm so close to getting my life back. Well, OP, I think it's great that you're starting to clear the air with your brother and sister-in-law, and that your sister-in-law saw that Thor in his crate is perfectly fine to hang around. Also, OP, congratulations on all the hard work that you've done to move forward. That is great, and that you are putting yourself in situations that make you uncomfortable will help you grow, like driving around the block alone. And also, all that you're doing to strengthen your relationships with your other friends, that's great. This means that your support network will just get stronger and better. And one final point, OP, regarding your paranoid thinking or thoughts, as you say, don't pay attention to them. Don't let them get to you. Those are negative thought patterns and they do not help you. Focus on the positive, stay positive, and move forward. All the best, OP. Take care. And so we've reached the end of the video. I truly hope you liked it. If you did, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to reach our goal of 100,000 subscribers. Also, if you feel like chatting with others from this community, you can always join my Discord server and check out my subreddit. I'll leave the links in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next video.